Hey guys, how's it going? This is another start to a Cards and Coffee chat hangout session. So just here to essentially interact with people, answer any questions about art, design, or whatever interests of hobbies of things that people may have. So I'm going to be opening up some cards, just again a continuation of what we had from last time. I still have many packs in some of these boxes, so I'm going to go through more of them today, as I'll try to do this within a weekly kind of session if possible. I have a couple of additional boxes I had bought a couple of weeks ago, still kind of on the way, more for sports, and I might want to try to also even bring in some more Marvel stuff or any kind of comic stuff if I can. But we'll see what we can just kind of find, and I just want to open these up to sleeve a few of them, and some of them I'm just kind of collecting again, just to put back in a new binder and whatnot. So we'll see what we can get. I want to adjust my the video on the webcam a little bit, if you guys don't mind. Give me 1 second. I think the brightness is a little bit too much for me, so I'm going to bring that down. And even actually the contrast, I want to kick a little bit lower. How's it going, you guys? Welcome. And again, welcome for us to do a little bit of a hangout session. So if you're hanging out, sketching, drawing, doing your own thing, studying, whatever you're doing, to just take the night, for if you're in the West Coast, or if you're in the daytime, if you're somewhere else, welcome me just to hang out and chat. I have my cup of coffee here. A little bit. It's about 9 p.m. my time right now. But yeah, you guys are welcome to chat about a few things if you have any questions about things. Just to give again always a bit of background about myself. I've been an instructor in entertainment design and sketching and drawing for about 10 years now straight. I taught at the Art Center College here in Pasadena, and I've been running my own school and classes now for the last year and a half now, maybe a little bit longer. But anyways, teaching has been a primary thing at the moment, but I still, produce things on my own books and content, and I worked in the industry in video games, mostly for concept art, for about 7 years after I left Art Center myself, graduation-wise in 2004, at the end of 2004. So after I finished school and I started working in the gaming industry, kind of got jaded a little bit, just due to the day in, day out kind of feel, and I wasn't really pushing a lot of my own stuff as much as I would have liked to. And once I got more into education and teaching and going to things like Comic Cons and conventions, I started to really get into the idea of developing my own stuff a lot more. So anyways, here I am now, more as an independent artist, and still teaching, very, very prominently. And through this whole quarantine and pandemic, being able to actually interact with people in that way has been a bit of a blessing, because again, staying stuck inside your own place, not able to go anywhere, kind of does suck a little bit. So connecting to people is quite the lifesaver. I'm going to adjust the lighting a little bit here. Okay. Sorry if I shake the camera a little bit, because it's directly attached to the table. Anyways, I just have some cards I want to open up here, and as people come in and if they want to hang out and chat with us, they're more than welcome to. I got a new binder starting at the moment, which I might actually grab real quickly. So if there are any cards that I want to be able to drop into this new binder that I'm setting up at the moment, let me zoom out a little bit. Oops. So I can kind of fill these in. What's kind of funny is weird. I went to a local store. It's like a small little alleyway, or not alleyway, more like a street with a bunch of like antique shops and stuff like this. And oddly enough, I went to this one little spot. This hole in the wall, and in a cabinet, they have sheets of Marvel cards, just randomly. So I bought 2 of the sheets, the ones that came from the 1990 version of Marvel Series 1, because these packs are extremely expensive, and I found these cards sold with me for a couple of bucks a card, essentially, and some of them are actually pretty good condition. So I was actually it's funny how things kind of align and work out that way, where when you start to look for things, your eyes are kind of fixated on it, you start to see it everywhere. So it's kind of weird that I wasn't necessarily intending to find those cards, but they just happened to be right in front of me. Yeah, Art Center, and I was not doing auto design, absolutely. I mean, that is still the biggest department right now in terms of its popularity. The biggest department still in terms of numbers is definitely illustration, and it still kind of is. And I taught under illustration mainly, but I also did a couple different things in different departments myself. Mainly in the product design department too. So, awesome, Arthur. I'm glad to hear that it did help you quite a bit. When did you take it, by the way? In terms of the class, Arthur is asking, saying that he was taking the class with me and helped him. So I really like hearing feedback and information about how your experience was. So excuse me as I start to open up some of these cards a little bit. Just received the Dynamic Bible, as Jason is saying, is awesome. Thank you again. Appreciate the support. And of course, as an independent artist who generates my own, books and stuff like this, I do have I'm working with a publisher, Superani, at the time for that book. But over the last number of years, everything I've always produced has been just me. I would market it. I would, pitch it. I would print it. Go to a local printer, pay stuff out of pocket, or also, do things like crowdfunding to generate enough money to get that off the ground. So it's always nice to hear where something like that is now starting to get into people's hands with a more prominent distribution. So let's see, I'm going to make sure this is a little bit cleaned up a little bit. There's nothing wet on here. Hands are relatively clean. I have dry hands anyway, so I'm not worried about oil and stuff like that too much. Alright, they're saying you took it on CGMA, which is a school I've taught at for, again, a decade, online. You took it in, I'm not sure when you took it, but it was a different teacher. Oh, I see, okay. So the instructions at CGMA courses, I have a online class there I taught for a number of years, and the lectures are pre-recorded, so you can hear the things that I'm talking about, but you might get a different instructor doing feedback for you. So how CGMA works is that you have the course, the instructor does a pre-recorded hour lesson per week. You come in, you listen to the lecture, you do the homework, submit it, and then you get an instructor that will basically give you feedback and information about how your work came out. Over the many years, I did teach that class with the content that I produced, but after so long, I decided to kind of transition away from it and start doing only mentorships at CGMA. But they still do use my content and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, welcome. We're just starting up right now. I'm just kind of opening up some cards. Again, for people that are joining in right now, these kinds of sessions are more for just conversation and chatting, questions and answers, because I get a lot of those kind of questions when I draw. I haven't had a chance actually this week to sketch just yet live because it just got a little bit busy again. But I'm hoping to pick that up as soon as I possibly can. But this is a little bit easier to do because, obviously I can just sit and just open packs and have conversations with people. So it's not as demanding mentally in terms of me sketching, drawing, and organizing my thoughts of how to reply to answers as best I can. But with this one here, it's more just fun and casual. But I'm just looking for, if there are any cards in here that I think could be great for sleeving, looking for like the primary characters and such like that would be always great. The whole Spider-Man, Wolverine, that kind of stuff. But funny enough, I just finished that last episode of Wanda Vision, which is on episode 9 right now, I think. But for those of you that watched it, obviously I won't spoil anything. But it's been great so far, the show, and I like where they're going with it, especially what they're doing visually with the designs of the characters. That is also an iconic shot. I grew up with a comic which had a great collaboration between these two characters. It was one of my favorites growing up. I used to copy and draw from that all the time. I can't remember the name of the artist that actually produced that comic, or not produced it, but actually drew and sketched, or the pages that is in it. But it still was quite memorable. It was a really iconic cover with Wolverine hitting the shield of Captain America. You see these sparks coming off of it. It was a great shot. Got Mephisto in here. That right there is one of the cards I'd be looking for. This Venom card, and this character of Venom has become so popular in the last number. Well, it's always been popular, but even recently it's gotten even more traction. So some of the cards in these packs, the Venom ones, seem to go quite well. So something like this, I'm going to put off to the side because this one I can definitely sleeve. The other ones are great. Some of the ones, story moments, milestones like this are awesome too. I'm going to keep them on top of the pack. And I'm going to put them in other sleeves if I need to. For the Venom one, I'll just put it right there. Was it the Jim Lee one? In terms of... Oh, no. It wasn't. It was way before that. That particular comic came out, I think, in the 80s, I would say. So it was definitely before the whole X-Men series that Jim Lee was doing, and before Uncanny, when he was doing that as well, too. Abhishek is asking, I want to start my own manga. Can you recommend any books, please? In terms of recommendations, absolutely. If anybody in here also has recommendations about content of things that they like to read or look at for things like graphic novels, you're welcome to share. For me, of course, in my personal opinion, I mention this in my classes a lot in terms of two books I always recommend as staples or at least pinnacles of graphic novels to me within art form and also within story. One of them, of course, is the Akira, right, by Katsuhiro Otomo. Akira, to me, is still, bar none, one of the most technically amazing graphic novels I've read or seen. Of course, growing up, I was introduced to the anime first, but the manga itself is so epic and incredible in terms of its like just its, I don't know, the scope, but also because of the artist at what age he was at and he actually did it in. So that one's pretty amazing. Akira, of course, right? Obvious. The other book is not an anime or a manga from Asia, but it's actually a European graphic novel. Thank you, Arthur. That's it right there. Yeah, the Captain America Annual. That cover is so awesome, and I still have that comic. I bought that when I was a kid. I must have been like 10 or something like that. Anyways, yeah. So the other book that I really like is written by Alejandro Jodorowsky and drawn by Juan Jimenez, which is Meta Barons. This is a holo card right here, the Ghost Rider. This one, if it's got a bent corner right there, soft corners. That's the thing about these old cards and packages; it can easily get damaged, and unfortunately, that one has a bent corner. So, keep it in terms of like the folders and sleeves. I'll keep that, but unfortunately, something like this can't really be valued. The Sabretooth card is also going to be really good. I have one of those already. Take a look at the quality later on. But yeah. So Meta Barons, Jodorowsky and Jimenez is absolutely a stunning graphic novel. Amazing in terms of its storytelling. It's also the world building aspect to it. It's such a large story. I would recommend. Again, I don't really only just look at mangas and such. There are many. You should open yourself up to many types of comics and storytelling, and of course, your main focus could be about creating your own mangas and such. Oh yeah, absolutely. Mobius is fantastic, and Alejandro did work with Mobius quite a bit as well too, and there are very much Mobius graphic novels that I would recommend. One is the Arzak, is one of my favorites. Arzak is awesome. But there are a couple other artists I can even look at or even talk about. One is the Black Sad graphic novels, which is not a far long ago comic. This is like recent ones in the last number of years, with Juan Guarnido. Black Sad is an amazing storyline and that more of a film noir styling. The characters are great. The storytelling is very mature, but yet at the same time has a visual that's very attractive in terms of drawing. But Black Sad, highly recommended. I haven't really read a lot of Japanese mangas recently in the more current dates, so I'm not super savvy on them at the moment. I mean, they're the notable ones that are all popular, and like how there's been a resurgence of even like Dragon Ball in manga again, right? I haven't read Dragon Ball in manga since I was like in the 90s as a kid, when they were coming out from Japan and going into being translated in like Korea and stuff like that. So when I was a kid with Dragon Ball, it wasn't in America at the time. So the only way I was able to actually look at the comics and mangas was the Asian translations into Korean. So and I would get them, and I was very poor at reading them. So because I grew up here in the States and being Korean myself, but I didn't really learn the language that well. So I was very westernized. But I would try to go through them because I love the art so much. And my mom would be able to pick up those Korean translated Dragon Ball comics back in like the 90s, so I can look through them. But yes. Nguyen is also saying Vagabond is also was going to be the one that I recommended. Inoue Takahiko, the artist for Vagabond and Slam Dunk, also absolutely stunning. One of my main inspirations for the comic that I did, which is the Blacksmith. So Berserk is great. I was really fascinated by Berserk when it first was introduced and came out in a manga form. I never really got into the actual animes, especially the recent more series of animes, just in general, where they use a lot of 3D to kind of let it almost be seen as 2D anime, but it's all 3D stuff. I'm not saying it's trying to like overtake it, but it's trying to like, I don't know, give the essence that it is 2D, but they're not doing it 2D. So I don't really get that. Like if they're gonna go 3D, they might as well just do it all 3D. So I know it could be potentially like money saving. It's easier to produce for the animation, for the consistency, but I never liked the look of it. There've been a handful of animes that do this a lot. Like some of the fighting ones and whatnot. Berserk did it a lot too, where they'll just build 3D models. And like the recent Ghost in the Shell announcement, that's all like 3D also, but they're trying to make it as 2D, so it's kind of odd. But you know what? I think, in my opinion, games do it better than animes. Like certain video games actually are able to, give this sense of 2D, yet they're all 3D. For instance, like that recent game that's coming out soon, the Guilty Gear series, man, they did them so well. I forgot what studio that was. Arc Systems. And so when they did the Dragon Ball Fighter one, again, all those 3D models are just so on point to the models in the actual 2D drawings, and so they're able to capture the movement of the camera, yet at the same time they're done so well in terms of its building of the models themselves. Any Spider-Man one is always good to have, but I'll come back to these and kind of isolate them later. The Psylocke one is also pretty good in terms of its response. Here's a Jim Lee piece, Professor X. Still looking for a Spider-Man, looking for the Wolverine. Tex, again, I mentioned him last time in the videos. Yeah, so formerly Rodline is saying, you feel old because your animes were things like Robotech and whatnot, and I totally understand, growing up, actually, Dragon Ball was something I had been introduced to as an anime when I was just a kid, but that's when they were doing the old cartoons of not Dragon Ball Z, but Dragon Ball when he was just a child. That was one of the first animes I had seen as a kid, but it was a Korean translation. From there, most of the animes I watched were more for like the films and movies and such. But yeah. Of course, what was that? I'm trying to read it here again. I'm sorry, not Mobius. I just read a comment, but it disappeared. Robotech. Oh yeah, Macross. Macross is what I'm gonna say. It was a great series for sure. I was definitely more on the side of Gundam. I was definitely more a fan of that when I was younger. Still am now. But yeah, Macross is also really cool. In the 90s, I kind of had a resurgence into Robotech and Macross when they released Macross Plus. I really liked that series a lot as an anime. Some of these are getting doubles. Some of them are new cards I'm getting introduced to. The Thanos cards was really great. Some of these I'm getting again. Ant-Man. Still looking for a few cards of Carnage with the Venom. Should go well together. So these two, again, I'll hold. This doesn't seem like there's any issues in terms of corners, edges. In terms of centering of these cards, I'm not really quite sure just yet because there's no actual border or frame. So some of these newer cards, they're not worth that much, honestly. But still, this is just more for my own visual, kind of like judging of quality. Question I get from the unit is, do you think it is possible to begin your own comic or personal project when you are just a beginner in drawing and design? Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're thinking, well, my intention is to go to a publisher like Image or Dark Horse as a brand new artist and send my stuff over to them and I want to get published. Do you think that's possible? Well, that's maybe a little bit more slim of a chance, right? As a beginning artist who's making their own comic to actually send it over to a publisher and say that, hey, would you want to get my, buy my stuff and license it? Probably not, right? But in terms of being able to produce your own content to, get out there in the world as a web series, your own printed stuff, sure, why not? Even as small runs and stuff like that, it's a form of being able to have building of an experience, a practice, to get your work quality high enough, but also to generate not a following per se, but it's more just on feedback, if anything else. So even for me, this last year when I released my first graphic novel, again, I've worked in the industry for 7 plus 10 years as an official full-time artist as concept art, been teaching upwards of 10 years and doing a lot of freelancing all over, from animations to print to advertising, and now recently also my little comic. But before the actual graphic novel that I had done it this last year, I've never actually done comics before. So even though with all the experience I may have had, I still felt like I don't know if I'm good enough. I've never drawn comics before. I loved comics. I always wanted to do it when I was younger, but I've never actually officially done it, whether for me or for someone else. So there were a lot of doubts, a lot of questions of whether or not I can even pull it off. It was very daunting, scary, because it was everything I had to handle on my own. Writing to the drawing, the marketing, putting the book together. It's also a new IP. Nobody knows anything about it. So when you go to like the shows like Comic-Con and stuff like that, and I'm pitching it, showing it, trying to get their people's attention to see if they can commit to buy it is really difficult, because if you go to like a convention or Comic-Con, nowadays new IPs are kind of lost in all this Marvel stuff and DC stuff because it become that much more popular. So people aren't going to willing to spend money on something they're not familiar to, right? So that's why it can be a little bit disheartening for some as they generate their own books, because they want a good response. Whether you feel like it's a good book or bad book, you're always going to have your own self-doubts no matter what. Basically, that's just what I'm kind of saying, is that even now, at this point, the first book I ever produced as a comic in the last, a year or 2 years ago, I still felt like, I'm not sure. I don't know if people will like it or not. But after you do it, it's like, well, I'm glad I finished it. At least I started it. It doesn't matter what anybody says. At least I saw it to the end to learn from that. And so my next book that I'll do, the same thing for the blacksmith, I'll be able to potentially do it better because I learned a lot of the ins and outs of what not to do. So I would recommend, yeah, absolutely, for sure, do it. I don't care if you're just beginning or not. The experience of actually going for it will drastically improve your quality as you go along, right? But don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid of the criticisms or the critiques or people comments on things, because it's a learning process, and they can't say anything about the fact that you tried and finished something. You know, that's the most important thing. What have they done then, right? If they're badgering you, or if someone is commenting in ways that doesn't necessarily help, what are they doing with their life, right? So as formerly Rodline is saying, great thing today is you can publish online or Amazon. Absolutely. The experience of going through making an entire book will be great. You will get tons of knowledge, as he's saying. And I agree with you completely. The ability to produce your own content today, this day and age, through social media, going through different printing services, which are pretty much all online now, is so much easier. And the prices have come down because the production of those such things have become, there's another Venom, I'll keep the doubles, have become so popular that there's more opportunities in terms of going to places to actually produce these kind of things. When you have a limited outsource for things like printing and whatnot, the cost can go up because there's less competition. But when you have so many different opportunities out there, these the companies and printing houses will start to bring their costs down. But again, you don't have to even print. It could just be an online thing through a social media account or through a web series of a blog or whatnot. Right? So I would definitely go through that route just to start it off, and so you can understand what you can do with it into the future. Is that right, Halo Gear? He's saying they're making a District 9 sequel, District 10. I never heard of it. I love that movie. I think I mentioned it last time. There's a cat. That one I will keep as well. But yeah, I loved District 9. The first time I saw it was at Comic-Con. I think I mentioned this before, that I went to Comic-Con and saw it, and I was able to chat with the director and meet some of the actors and stuff like this. So I really like that a lot. Have you read the book Limitless by Jim Quick? Was a question from Chloe Franklin. I have not. It sounds interesting. The title seems really familiar. I have to look into it. The artist or author does not. Jim Quick. What would you do if you could not get the likeness of a subject? Try again, right? That's the only thing you can do. There's no, direct answer or a quick way of being able to get a likeness if you don't get it the first time, especially if you're beginning to develop your skill sets. Like right now, even still with experience, am I able to hit, let's say a study from a photograph or a model of someone I'm looking at in front of me as a likeness directly in one shot? Sometimes, but a lot of times no. I mess up all the time. Things are always off a little bit, and the only reason why is because you're eyeing things, right? Even if you're trying to construct something with a technique, measuring things by eye is still measuring by eye, and you can easily misalign things or get things off in proportion, get things out of symmetry, scaling of stuff. So the likeness can be off quite a bit, even if you have a slight, not even mistake, but change to those elements what I just mentioned completely changes the look of the person. So the only way to correct them is first to be aware of it. Do you even see those slight changes that are happening from your eyeing of the information being transferred over? And if you're able to recognize it, you might be able to actually go back and adjust it. Now, my recommendation is not to go on top of that same drawing. I would actually do it again, right? Thanks for that update, Halo Gear, about District 10. Confirmed on Twitter. That's cool. Sounds interesting. I'm definitely going to research into it. I like the first one a lot. I honestly like a lot of Neil's work. There were a couple that were not as strong, a bit repetitive, but I do find them to be entertaining. Welcome, Anara and Adriano. Can these cards be used to fight each other in a game or a match? No, in the end. These are just boring art cards. So they were more, for me, interesting as a kid because I always liked looking at them to draw and sketch. I was also really into the characters as a kid. So for me, it was just more the collecting aspect to it. I'm a big collector of stuff. I opened about 5 or 6 packs of the Marvel stuff. I actually have a few here that I really I want to keep and hold on to and put them in sleeves. I want to be careful. I don't want to scratch the surface up, but we'll put them there for the moment. And I'll put them in sleeves later on. I have a pack of them over here as well too, so I might use them in a minute. Sleeving stuff is boring to watch, so. These cards, are they vintage or new? Well, they're new packs. They're unopened, but they're vintage. I guess vintage you can call it. I mean, it's 90s. Is it really that old? I guess it kind of is. It's more than 20 years ago now. But this pack over here, the Marvel one, is from 92. These packs are from 1991, I believe. 91. So, you know, they're probably older than some of you. Let's see. It's another question over here. How do you make more interesting and captivating illustrations? Well, I think it comes down to what you want to say through that image, right? I mean, you can't rely on the image to spontaneously, you know, do something interesting. It's based on the idea, the concept that you might have, whatever the visual it is, right? Whether it's a study of, let's say, a person from a figure drawing to an actual story or illustration based on things you create. But at the end of the day, to make that visual interesting or captivating, as you're asking, it comes down to your thought, your idea, and you know what that story might be. You know, is that illustration capturing a moment of something of drama or humor? Is the figure drawing something of interesting based on camera and pose, right? So based on, you know, not necessarily you just looking at something and taking it information-wise and copying it, like a photograph or what you're seeing, but how can I take what I am seeing and interpret it in a way that can be interesting to the viewer? But it has to be also interesting to you. So the question is, what is interesting to you? If you don't know, it's because you haven't looked at enough stuff. You got to build your taste and things that you find attractive more by experiencing more things, right? I hope that makes sense. Who's my favorite Marvel hero right now? It actually, I've mentioned it last week. It was Wolverine, but today it's still Silver Surfer. Question from Anara is, I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but how would you recommend working through a depressive state? I'm finding myself struggling to keep up with deadlines while in this funk. Well, first and foremost, you're not the only one. Keep that in mind. You know, you're not the only one going through something like this, which also means that it's normal to have those kind of states where you don't feel it, you know, where you're not necessarily in the zone, or you can't get things going, or whatever you're producing is not matching up or feeling anywhere near what you want to have. So, you know, what do I do then in that situation? Okay, yeah, I understand. Other people can feel that, but it's still, I'm the one going through it. What should I do in that situation, you know? And of course, there's easy ways where, well, not easy, but some people can easily say, just push through it, you know, get over it, that kind of thing, you know? And that's, I don't know if that's the best advice, but I do understand what they're trying to say, is that sometimes you have to go through that mud, and as you come to the other end, you might get strengthened in that, right? There are moments where you have to look back and think, you know, in that state, I could have just not done anything, but I could also just push beyond that. And that kind of tests your level of drive, possibly passion, the commitment to things, and testing you as a person, right? But if you're struggling with it and you keep up, you know, to keep up with deadlines and stuff like this, and it falls into a cycle where every time it does that with anything you're working on, then there's something else potentially going on, you know? It could be based on like how you're working. It could be your environment, you know? It could be potentially the things that you're actually doing. Maybe you don't actually even find it entertaining. Maybe actually it's becoming more like work. How can I make it something that was so interesting that I don't have to, you know, actually feel concerned or anxious about even starting it, right? So there's a couple things you have to look at there. Yeah, I'm not saying that you should always kind of side to things that are just fun for you, and there have to be things that are challenging. But the balance is important. It can't just always crush you, right? But in any case, yeah. There is a nice Golden Age Superman. This is the DC cards I'm opening up right now. These are the Cosmic cards. Definitely wanted one of those. But the corners are bent on that one too. Out of all the cards in here, this is the one that's bent. It's unfortunate. Again, the risk of old cards. Up above, I had a question from Mario, which is, how many Jim Lee cards do I have? I have a whole binder full, and I have another box that's unopened from the recent X-Men, or not the recent, but the 92 X-Men cards. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Saying I have no trouble drawing a human figure, but I have trouble drawing that figure in an environment. Especially, I feel like the figure always becomes too small to draw in a large environment. Yep, so that's also a great card. This one feels okay. Centering looks really good. No damaged corners. We'll definitely keep that off to the side. I love the cover ones, especially the iconic one. I think I opened that one last time. But so I think the question maybe is like, you're having trouble, no trouble drawing the figure, but what do I do to include it in the environment? That's a really difficult challenge because scaling is actually one of the hardest things that amateur artists have to overcome. Because even like, let's say I ask you to draw an interior of a room, and if I have like tables and chairs and doors and windows, making sure your proportioning is proper within all the things that relate in that environment, it's trickier than you think. It's obvious, right? Well, that chair is this size, that window is this size, but when you have to sketch it or draw it, and you start to put it in there, it's so easy to mismanage the proportioning and scaling of those things. This shows the ability and also the skill set of that artist in that situation. So if you're required to do a background design and something like that is off, it really shows your skill set, your experience level. And to be honest, stuff like that are amateur mistakes. But as everybody does, they start somewhere. So you are always beginning at some point, and then you have to figure those things out in the beginning as you develop your skills. But those are common mistakes that young artists can run into, misscaling things. The figure inside an environment, common mistake as well too. Pretty nice pack right there on that one. There are a couple of cards in that I liked. I really wanted that Superman though, but it's alright. Hey John, I was asking, are these cards the ones that can be super rare and worth some good amount of money one day? I have no idea. This Series 3 cards, I mean, they're pretty common. They printed a crap load of them in the 90s. I mean, some of the boxes are starting to go up in price, but my intention is not really to make a lot of money off of this. I do this because it's fun for me. It's a hobby. I like collecting stuff. If there was something in here of value, I'd probably like to get it graded, but I probably wouldn't sell it. I'd keep it because I just like to keep things. But yeah, it's just for me, if anything else. These, DC cards are not really worth anything either, really. There's not enough interest for it. It's not really hyped, as what's going on right now. But again, I like a lot of the characters and artwork, and I just find it fascinating. How would you construct their own, hold on one second, just read their question. Construct their own art education if they don't have the structure of an art school? Marshall has brought up looking at syllabuses, the whiteboard method, and etc. What's my opinion? I think I kind of brought this up last time again, the whole idea about how you approach education as an independent without going to, let's say, an art school that's not structured as a curriculum, The first and foremost is to bring up that awareness, to research. And even though you don't go to an art school, you don't go to, let's say, a university or even like an online school, you still have access to information on their websites, on their platforms, to see the kind of classes they offer, what their general curriculum is like. I guarantee you this, okay? You go to like a school like CGMA, the online school, it'll tell you the kind of classes you should take, what order, what's available, what the instructor is, who the instructor is, and what the classes are about. You can also then go to like Art Center, like the school that I taught at or went to. You can go to their website and they'll even tell you what their undergraduate program is offering. So if you start to see the kind of classes that these schools offer, you start to see a pattern within many schools too. And so you can start to research what those classes are, find them independently through other platforms or through, maybe like self-education from like tutorials or books or whatever the case is. And then you can start to formulate your own path in that way without having to really go through an actual school system, But the actual researching has to be done. Nobody should just sit here and do it for you. The more you go find out on your own, the better you can formulate a picture for yourself as to what you want to do. Even then, it's still a risk because you don't know exactly what you want to do sometimes. But at the very least, you can start to understand what those programs offer for those students that go under their program. And that's honestly the best thing you should do, is to be more aware of what's out there. Who would you say is my favorite artist right now? I said it last time too. Again, this is a common question I get. I'll always say this. There are questions that I've gotten. I'll just say I've answered it before, but I'll answer it again. In terms of my favorite draftsman, I really love looking at her work still. Right now it's Eliza Ivanova. She's a friend and under the Super Ronnie group with us. So every time she produces stuff on her Instagram, it's like, my gosh, her work is so awesome. The way she draws and the way she's able to move her sketch and line is so intuitive and so effortless. And she's able to have so much gesture yet clarity in her work that, to me, when I look at it, it's like I don't have that as much as I would like to. Some people might disagree, but I feel for myself, those are things I would like to be able to not really harness, but I do appreciate the things that I know that I can't do, because it makes me want to elevate myself more. Question here is, do I have any advice on drawing casual, natural poses? I've been feeling like they tell more story than a bombastic, dynamic pose. I completely agree with you. The more casual, natural posing is a lot more difficult in actuality. In that situation, you have to see the casual and natural poses. You got to see what gravity does to the human body. Because typically in models, when you go to like a figure drawing session, you see somebody on a stand or a podium, that model is holding a pose. It could be a 5-minute pose, 10-minute pose, but that model is consciously deciding what the pose is and holding it in a very stiff position. But when you go in the real world, cafes, bars, which right now is kind of hard to, but those are things you could do potentially in the future, but these are things I did in the past. If I would travel or go outside, go out and have a drink with a friend, I'd observe people. Because when you're not really consciously thinking of how to hold your body has a natural state in terms of like how it sits, if you're having a drink, how you hold the cup, how your body just slumps, You don't ever really hold yourself rigid all the time unless you're consciously doing so. But studying the real thing observationally is really the key. So from there, looking at other artists and how they are able to capture that is also a big aspect to it. So this is also why I like Eliza's work, because it does have that really casual posing to it. There's a lot of weight to the figure. Other artists, guys like Heinrich Kley. Heinrich Kley is Kley, is another amazing artist from the 1800s from Germany, who, for my personal opinion, is one of my favorites of the classical times of historical artists that had just amazing draftsmanship. But the way he moved his lines and the gravity of the figure was really well done. Question up here from Alan is, you've begun pursuing art seriously and was wondering how long I should stay doing the fundamentals. Your plan right now is to draw a box, then my dynamic sketching class. Would that be good enough? No. More. Figure drawing classes, perspective classes. This is also a Nightwing, which is really great. Put that aside. But even then, taking them once is never enough. Do you think you can learn everything you need to know about that topic by taking that class once? I certainly didn't. I took my dynamic sketching class like 3 times. I took perspective classes twice. And even then, I still felt like I don't know everything. I still feel like I don't know everything, And so that means a repetition of it is truly important. Even professionals now will revisit their fundamentals, so that means the fundamentals never are supposed to end. It's a continual process. So should you just stay doing fundamentals? For sure. Should you then intermix other classes that are intermediate and advanced while you are doing some of those fundamentals in the meantime? Absolutely. Whether through taking a class or through your own personal pursuit. But there's a balance of it, right? Right now you might take more classes in numbers of fundamentals, but into the future you might take one fundamental class and then balance it with another class that's more intermediate. But at the same time, you're always into the mix of pursuing, your fundamentals from there. Let's see. Remember seeing on your story, how's my DeLorean time machine going? I got a bunch of packs I got to unwrap and put together. I'm excited to put it together more, but it's going to be about a good year or more to get all the pieces in, because I essentially have a subscription for that model of the DeLorean, the Back to the Future car, which they send you through subscription. So you pay a certain amount, and they send you piece to piece to piece. So it's supposed to help pay off the thing, because they're actually quite expensive. But if you can just pay off, month to month, a little bit here and there, it's easier, but it takes a long time to build then. But I do have a bunch of pieces I have to put together. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So if I missed a couple questions, I will apologize. Do you know what the difference between BFA in drawing and a BFA in illustration is? No. I have no idea. Because, I have a BFA in illustration, I believe, yeah. But I've never heard of BFA in drawing. I would assume they'd be under the same category. I've always been a fan of this character, Kilowog, under the Green Lantern series. Calabac. Some of these art pieces are definitely great, even from the DC side. The characters are definitely a little bit more goofier to a degree, because some of them are so classic and old, and they haven't really changed them that much. But and some of the art is okay, but some of the stuff on here is pretty cool too. couple of the questions here is, what artists do you recommend to study for drawing backgrounds? That's one of my weaknesses. I would say looking at a lot of animation artists, people that worked over at like Disney or DreamWorks or any other sort of like animation studio. Background artists for animation, I find, amazing. So guys like Bill Perkins, who's an instructor. Bill Perkins is a great teacher, and he's also one of the heads over at Art Center at the moment. So definitely Bill Perkins might be someone to look at. His paintings, his drawings, he does a lot of storyboard kind of stuff, production art. Take a look at his. I think he's a great guy. Might have some good inspiration for you. Chloe is saying, unfortunately, I did not start in being serious with art until my sophomore year in high school, and now a senior, so it's only been a couple years, and was wondering what methods I could possibly use to develop my skills efficiently. Well, I think I understand that you don't want to waste time. That's a current, a worry for all people. But especially when you're very young, you get so concerned of like your place and taking advantage of time, and you don't want to be wasting time or be too late in things. So you're trying to pick up the pace. Like, I got to get to this next step. You're going from sophomore to senior year. The amount of time there is actually very short. It may seem very long to you in the moment. Of course, I can understand that. But when you start to look at it from the outside perspective, and a year or two process to build some of your seriousness or endeavors towards art is very microcosm amount of time compared to someone, let's say, for me, who's been out of high school for 20 years or plus. To me, that moment was just a speck. It was important. It was highly again, a strong moment of my changes in understandings of things. But at the same time, we have to look at the big picture. We have a lot of time in front of us to be able to actually grow that. But of course, like I said, in terms of, to go back to your question, are there any methods I could possibly do to use to develop my skills more efficiently? Well, I think a lot of that is still just making sure that you're really researching a bit as to like what artists out there do professionally, right? What's actually out there that I can actually pursue myself as a goal. Do I want to work in animation? Do I want to work in comics or things like that? Do I want to pursue my own, career paths of my own independent art? And in that, it might help you build then a general idea of a curriculum or kind of classes that you might want to explore, even at the fundamental level, that is more centered in those areas of goals, right? Because I could say, I want to do art. But then you say, okay, I can do all kinds of art. You can do photography, sculpture, 3D, 2D, figure drawing, figure painting, comics, or whatever the case is. It's so open, right? But if you kind of narrow it down a little bit, it doesn't have to be like pinpoint exact, and that's not very practical or realistic in my opinion. You shouldn't be saying, I'm in high school right now, and in 6 years, I want to work in animation. And it's like, well, I don't think it's going to work that way, So the best thing to do is say, I have a general interest in the area of animation. I don't know what's there just yet for me to do, because there's storyboarding, there's viz dev work, background work, character work. But at the moment, I'll kind of work towards that direction with the education that centers in that area. And through that education, I might start to fine-tune my interests as what I really like. And I start to really kind of cultivate that information to be more efficient. But right now, you got to explore. The best thing to do at the current moment of your age is to try things to figure out what you like and don't like. It's not about saying, I got to choose a direction, just stick with that. What if you chose wrong, right? It's better to choose multiple directions of path and feel like, well, I don't know if I've gotten a solid direction just yet. Because you can do that now. You can't do that in 10 years, right? Here's a nice one. I like these cover ones a lot, actually. Got a ton of these cheetahs. I have like 5 of these. That's the one thing about these DC cards, that they tend to give you quite amount of doubles and triples and such. But I don't think there are many of these cards in this box, actually. So I think the amount of cards that actually comes within a set is like maybe 180 cards or something like that. So Anaro's asking, what's my philosophy on life? Yeah. Oh man, look at that, Shazam. That's so bizarre. Not bizarre, but funny. It's hilarious, but I like it because of its comedic nature. It's serious, but it's also not. I like that one a lot, actually. Yeah, philosophy on life, right? It seems like it would be, I don't know, it's not obviously an easy question to answer. Maybe it is, I don't know, I guess. It could be as simple as like saying, I keep it simple. I don't know. I mean, it's not maybe as easy as a single word or a reply like that. But in terms of philosophy of it, I guess It's more the sense that nothing is really permanent. You know, I'm sure that's. I mean, it's obvious, right? Life in general, or anything you pursue, nothing stays forever. But I think still really kind of absorbing that, also embracing that impermanence is something I find actually very attractive, not scary. I'll give you an example. I think a part of why or how that mentality, this is a cool one, kind of comes from is actually from drawing itself. Another great Hawkman, modern age. It's not bad too. It comes from the drawing in classes from Art Center. So when I was growing up, obviously going through school and taking classes and having my mentor Norm, when you're younger, the idea of permanence or impermanence is not really a thought. It's just more like, I'm here, I'm trying to find myself. I want to do, obviously pursue things that I can set up for my success in the future, for work, career, whatever the case is, life. But you don't really ever think about the impermanence or permanence of it. You can be reminded of it based on, of course, certain experience that some people have more of and some people have less of. For me, a part of that is, of course, of losing people, right? Whether it's like family or friends, and people pass away, people die, and that's obviously the most, the biggest aspect, for us as people of that impermanence is when people pass. It's hard for people to obviously mourn and to let that part go, and it's scary in general. I mean, in center of human, experience or like religions or cultures and stuff like that, it's all centered around the fear of death, right? And not wanting to pass on. So we always want to like gather as much as possible so that we have some sort of stay in this world, whether through the memory of others, through the things that we create. We want to leave something behind, the people that we get together with, and the children that we can have. I'm opening some basketball cards right now, but for me, I think a part of that also just stems from the actual act of drawing. As artists, for us, here we can say that, yeah, educationally we're focusing on things of generating art from things that we see, whether it's a copy or from a photo study or through a model or drawing from. But then there's also that transition as we make and become mature of telling stories, where we're now actually even generating ideas, worlds, parallels of things that are of our own experiences. They're all very individual to us. We can all kind of experience them in similar kind of ways, but still the person saying them is their story, So as storytellers, you're generating something that doesn't exist in a way, and that's pretty powerful. And of course, like I said, the impermanence of it is something. It's kind of interesting because you are not permanent. You move on, but the things that you can do potentially can stay and be passed on to a certain degree. But even beyond that, a little bit deeper to it, whether I'm creating something that's a project or a story or a comic, even the actual very act of drawing is something that is supposed to be impermanent. Because when we're younger, we put so much value into things that we want to produce. Well, I generate a piece of art, and I'm so afraid of losing it. Oh, I don't want to mess it up, or I don't want it to be damaged. I don't want people to look at it to copy it. This is my thing, right? I don't want it to lose its strength because someone critiques it. That's some of those kind of things that we kind of think of when we start just doing art and drawing. But for me, when it comes to drawing, where it stemmed from this idea of being able to accept that impermanence is drawing on the chalkboard, actually, from this class of dynamic sketching. Because most of the drawings that we do is on pieces of paper and all that kind of stuff, and even though those things are also impermanent, eventually those things will decay, go away, in enough time. But for me, the idea of actually putting something on the board and immediately erasing it is something I actually started to enjoy more. Because I knew that what I was thinking of and putting on the board was already going to be gone anyways. So then the very end result of that drawing on a whiteboard, chalkboard, whatever, then paper afterwards, had always a mentality knowing that it didn't exist anymore. It's already gone. So then what was more important to me was the very act of doing it, right? Living in that present moment of actually putting the lines down to show people what I'm doing. So then when I was done with it, I already let that drawing go, so it doesn't exist anymore, so I can just erase it, So it doesn't matter how good that drawing looked. It didn't matter if it was this epic piece or prolific drawing or something that was so unique and separate. It didn't matter. Because the fact is, I had a memory of it. I knew what I had done. The experience behind it is now in my essence of who I am, and I could reproduce it again if I want to. So this idea of impermanence became much more acceptable just from the very act of drawing. And so then if I bring that into the other areas of my life, the things I can absorb or things that I learn or the things I even have, these kind of things also, are impermanent. So if I had lost them, I'm not really going to feel bad about it. You know, I mean, it kind of sucks. Yeah, I'm getting these things because I like them, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, like I said, end the world, right? And you can say, oh, that kind of sucks in the moment, but eventually, you know, you're gonna get over it. But for me, I can get over it much quicker because it's really not that important. They're fun, and I love these things, and I put time and effort into them. But it's more about right now, this moment of me opening these cards, having a conversation with people here that have similar interests and mindsets, which is much more interesting and fun than the end result of me putting these in sleeves and valuing it for money. That's nothing really, right? Compared to the actual moment of time now to learn, to know yourself more. I mean, I know it sounds very kind of hokey and way out there, but if you're talking about something as deep as philosophy of life, I know that's a big question, but, you know, it comes down to the very act of drawing for me, you know? So then it also attaches itself to all of the things that I have. I also know that kind of does sound like, well, then nothing matters, right? You're not connected to anything anymore. You don't have the same level of maybe passion or then the depth of relation with the things that you connect to. I don't think that's true, you know, because I appreciate that moment more in that present moment. So the time that I have with a person or the time that I have with an object, a thing that I really appreciate in that moment is why I like it so. It's because I like it so much. I'm actively pursuing it and doing it. Because it could be gone tomorrow. And again, you could be gone tomorrow. And that's not supposed to be a sombering or depressing thought. It's supposed to be actually more invigorating. Because if that is the case, then what are you doing now? Right? And hopefully that will snap something. Saying, shoot, well, what am I doing? I should start doing something I really love. I love opening cards. I like these arts. I like talking to people. I could be drawing right now too. I love doing that. But I have many things that I loved, right? This is why it's always one of those reminders of like thinking of, you know, man, I should maybe call some family. Or, you know, it's good to say hi to somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. And I'm in fault of that as well, you know. Sometimes I forget, I haven't called my parents in like weeks. I get so busy, and it's an excuse. I'm so busy all the time. I'm working. It's normal. We're all people. Or friends you haven't talked to in forever. All of a sudden, man, I haven't talked to that person in so long. In those moments, hopefully what it does is entices you to say, well, just reach out. How much actual energy and effort does it take to do that, right? Yeah, that's great. You know, what other thing do you need right now? The ability to just draw, listen, interact, talk to people, know yourself more. I mean, yeah, of course there are many other things you could still be doing that are just as equally as valuable. Spending time with your family, whatever the case may be. I'm still looking for that Jordan card. I have a couple of other players I picked up that I like a lot. But these packs, again, they're not super valuable right now, but I'm definitely going to be mindful of what I put in. But there's so many of these cards that I get a lot of double to these also. Like this Dominic Wilkins, double that, definitely. Benny is asking, just wanted to drop by and say hi. Hey, how's it going? Welcome. How to self-improve and self-critique things to my class. Appreciate that. Yeah, Benny was a student from, it's been almost a couple years now? It seems like longer, potentially, because of the whole pandemic stuff. But nice to have people in here familiar. That's why I like the Hangout sessions where people just drop in and say hi. If I had missed a couple questions because I've been talking here for a bit, I do apologize. There was one question right above. I see it. Gohi is asking, what do you think about artists in India? Not sure. I don't really have a lot of thoughts because I don't really have a lot of experience of interacting with people from India. I have obviously taught students from India. I've had students from India when teaching classes like at Art Center and whatnot. But in terms of the community of artists in India, specifically in that location, I don't know much about the community of artists there. I do feel that artists for wherever you come from, India even also, are driven. I think there's a lot of potential there for sure, because it's one of those things where the entertainment arts and what we do has become so much more popular, widespread, and more opportunistic in terms of education online, that people that are all over the world are getting a better chance to get the information they need to grow. So untapped areas that have so much growth potential is now starting to germinate. Places like in Eastern Europe, I find amazing artists coming from like Australia. India now is starting to grow dramatically. I'm noticing a lot more students that are interested in taking classes with me and otherwise online and such, because it's there now. But in terms of in India, you know, wherever it's going to be, is the community of artists though? Do I have any thoughts on that? I wish I would know more. How could I know? I want to go there. So if I can visit at some point in the future and visit some of the universities and schools out there and see what the community of artists are like and what they get into, will be an amazing opportunity. Who knows? One day. But yeah, definitely being in Eastern Europe was a part of that. People from Poland, Bulgaria, Russia, Ukraine. I found amazing artists from those places quite very driven, and they work their asses off. It's crazy. So I found it very inspirational to do workshops there for the last number of years. It started a lot in like 3D stuff from a lot of the Eastern European people, and a lot more of the 2D work is starting to kind of grow from that side too. In India, I'm seeing mostly 2D art being the main focus. Sorry for the glare on these here. Let's focus that down like this. Just yesterday, your friend was talking to you about living in the present. I guess that's the point we're trying to articulate. Yeah, basically. You would definitely can be a lot more happier, not worrying about the future. Having goals are important. Having dreams are good, but you don't want to plan so uh, deliberately to like think or suggest that in 2 years time, 1 year time, 5 years time, that these are fixed points of things that need to happen. You're setting yourself up for failure, which is a good experience too, but there's a smarter way of going about it. I saw that card again before, the Jeff Hornacek card. It's an all-star card, is nice, but again, I'm just looking for some specific players right now. These ones I'm putting in like these plastic bins and cases. I'll obviously keep the cards, but still, just looking for a specific few to be able to put in plastic sleeves. More for the collection, as always. And again, if anybody else has any more questions or topics, and if you guys are just working on stuff, drawing, that's great. The Reggie Miller card I had before, but I'll keep this one off to the side. We got definitely a couple more packs. I might go back to some of the other Marvel cards and DC cards and open up a few more. We're, again, going for maybe an hour or a little bit longer. We're not going to go way too long, but right now we've been going at it actually almost an hour already. So I'm just going to finish out the rest of these basketball cards, maybe open a couple more the Marvel and DC ones, and then we'll call it a night for today. I do plan for sure next week to do a live session for drawing and sketching. So that will be on my Twitch channel. When? Most likely it's going to be on I want to say Wednesday would be nice, potentially. I don't know, maybe even Monday. Because on Monday I only do one thing, which is a mentorship. So I finish at that mentorship, I have the entire day free. So I might even do it on Monday. Hiruma is asking, how long did it take you to learn how to draw the human figure from any angle? Just asking out of curiosity is a question. Well, I mean, learning how to draw the figure was something that we developed during the time of college at Art Center. And I started drawing the human figure officially, in live models. This is before Art Center in my 2-year colleges, right after high school. So I must have been, 19, 20 when I first started drawing the figure a lot. learning a lot of the methods, techniques during those actual schools. Here's a Clyde Drexler All-Star. That's a really off-center card, but that one I'll also keep. But from there, taking the classes at Art Center, learning those actual methods did, of course, develop a better sense on how to push the shape and the forms on the human form, because you start to see different perspectives and different ways of looking at it. Simplicity is really the key, right? Simple forms, structures, wireframing, that kind of stuff, to really understand 3 dimensions. But it's not even just about building the human figure a lot of the times. It's about being able to understand how to move forms in space, even if it's just basic core structures. So taking the box or a cone and being able to draw those in different positions. Still life is still very important. But from there, that can be converted over to the figure, because the figure can also be constructed with primitive forms, cylinders, boxes, right? That kind of stuff. For me, in terms of if I can just give a quick recommendation of what I usually begin with to move the human figure around, I usually start with the torso. So I start from the torso, from the neck, collarbone down to the groin area, knowing the body's proportion, going half and half, right? And then being able to twist that torso around, which we call the pillowcase or the rice sack. And so drawing that many times over, then we attach the limbs, then we attach the head structure. I know that people sometimes learn how to draw the figure by the head count, but I use the torso first. Proportion the torso well, and everything else can fit on top of that as a core. My Twitch channel, just look up Peterhanstyle. All of my social media branding is under Peterhanstyle. Can I suggest an ideal study routine for a day as a beginner art student? Well, the routine, I don't know, because routines are usually built by, or at least developed from outside sources that, you're able to pursue a rhythm or a system for you to follow. Like if you don't have one, like for instance, classes, school, or work, those are things you can plan around. So if I have something I have to do that I've signed up for and I'm a part of, then I can actually establish things like that, right? But let's say you're not taking classes at all. Let's say you're not taking it, you're not doing any kind of work. So to build a routine, for the entire day, it's got to be able to center around some kind of activity, right? So in that situation, understanding what that activity is, like what your kind of general goal is supposed to be, might help you build then a routine around it. So let's say my first, let's say a routine I want to develop is just a daily drawing kind of activity. Okay, well, it can just be drawing every day. And I was like, well, what are you going to draw? Sometimes you're not planned ahead for it. So you sit there trying to draw something. It's like, I don't know what to draw, right? I thought I wanted to do the figure, but I can't really seem to be interested in the figure right now. What else am I going to work on? So you can get stuck if you don't really kind of think about what your general goal set might be in that current moment. So instead, what you could do is do short goals and say that, okay, in this month, I want to work on my skill set of being able to, strengthen my perspective. And so then I'm going to center my routine around that focus of what I want to develop as a skill. So from Monday to Friday, Saturday and Sunday I'm off. I'll do my own stuff. Work on personal things, spend time with people when you can. Or if I'm going to draw other stuff besides perspective. But from Monday to Friday, I'm going to set up a time where I can kind of work on that based on what's available hourly wise for you, right? And that's your month. That's your focus of what you're doing for the entire month. You can center something around it. But if you don't have that, again, it's incredibly difficult to maintain a routine, because now you're just trying to get up and just do something without really knowing what it is you want to do. So it's so easy to fall out of that routine, right? Because there's nothing really to follow. If you're saying, well, I'm going to get up and draw 3 hours a day, you can try that and try that daily, but it's so hard to get that going because you really don't have a path at all. I haven't really seen any of the cards in these packs have really caught my attention just yet, so I'm kind of surprised. Here's a Carl. That's a good one. Antoine Carr. Interesting. First one in the horizontal that I really kind of seen like this. But yeah, I hope that helps a little bit in terms of answering the question. Beeping is about routines. Let's see. Devansh is asking, any tips about drawing figure digital? Well, it depends on what it is you're using. If you're using Photoshop with a Cintiq or tablet or Wacom tablet, or it's going to be things like the iPad Pro with Procreate. In those situations, it's first getting used to the tool set. Like anything else, whether you're using a pencil, pen, brush, or digital, you have to become familiar first with the tools. The best thing to do is just play. play with the tool sets to get more familiar with it. The more time you invest in that, you'll fight less with the material. Then you can really start to focus on what it is you're trying to learn. So if I'm trying to draw the figure, but if you're fumbling with the actual program, that's going to kind of halt your progression. Because you now have to like sit there and figure out like what brush do I want, like how am I supposed to work all these layers and such, what scale should I work at, what resolution, that kind of stuff, right? So figure all that stuff out first. Play with the medium a lot. Here's that Dominique Wilkins again. These are a lot of doubles in these packs I've been noticing. It's alright. Let's see, the other question is, am I excited for the Zack Snyder Justice League? Yes and no. I didn't really like it the first time from Joss Whedon. There were elements about it that were exciting, but definitely, the execution from that release wasn't that great. This new release from Zack Snyder, if anybody doesn't know Zack Snyder stuff that well, from 300 and whatnot, he's kind of been in charge of the DC universe for cinematics, which he's kind of done an somewhat okay job of. I don't know how I feel about it just yet. I'll watch it. I'll definitely watch it. But am I looking forward to it? I don't know. It's not that super exciting. The interesting thing for me is, and I mentioned this in a class earlier today, is how he's approaching the aspect ratio. When I watched the trailer and I was kind of reading about what he's changed, well, not really changed, but gone back to his original, I guess, vision for the movie. I mean, the story is a story. Yeah, he's going to change a few things out, re-edit it, that kind of stuff, and it will probably add more information, but the general core of the story of the movie is probably going to be generally the same, right? We have, that one bad guy coming in, and then he's also going to be stealing the box, right? And then, of course, the Justice League brings back Superman, and they try to find a way to fight them. All the team come together. Pretty basic, So I'm pretty sure in that, nothing's really going to alter too much. But I do find it interesting in terms of, the technical parts of how the filmmaking process is going. So, looking at the way he's actually coming back into... There's a Jordan card right there. There's the All-Star. Centering looks really good on that one. No damage on the corners. And that's one I wanted. This one I'm definitely going to sleeve right away, because that is definitely what I've been looking for. Anyways, what's interesting is going to be how they are doing the aspect ratio. They're doing a 1:3:3 to 1, a box format, which is crazy, I don't know why they're doing that in the first place. It makes sense if the Justice League movie was being released again in theaters for IMAX, because that's what it was being built for, the IMAX theater screen, which is a large, massive screen in square format. But most people's TVs are in 1:8:5 widescreen format. So if you put that movie out there in that aspect ratio in square, the black bars are on the side. The most comments I've read so far have been basically, I don't like it. It's contained. It's claustrophobic. Because that's not what people are used to. So I think it's a risk in what they're doing right now. I like that he's sticking to his guns, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to really help. And if people don't know what I'm talking about, I mean, it's all about film jargon and stuff like this. It's not that, don't worry about it. I'll move on. When you're a beginner artist, should you work on one specific subject topic until you get better, or just draw many different things? In my opinion, draw many different things with a focus on something you really like, So if there's something you really enjoy, drawing the figure, make that a priority, but also incorporate, day to day, bit by bit, other things you want to work on. Perspective, still life drawing animals, drawing landscapes. You should experiment with a lot of different kind of subjects and things you want to explore as a sketch, drawing, something creative, even storytelling. It's never too late for that. But if you're trying to say, I want to learn this, get as great as possible in figure drawing, then I'm done. Now I'm going to go to perspective. Focus on perspective for a month or 2 or 3, right? But if you don't actually balance those things together, and you leave behind the figure drawing, you're going to be like, well, I feel like I haven't drawn figures in so long. I got to go back to drawing figures again. Now you're just doing a big circle, But what you have to do is incorporate that as a daily routine in everything you do. That means, yeah, you have to draw a lot of stuff into the future. Figure drawing, and other things you might be developing as skills. Composition, value, color, while you're also still doing those fundamentals. You have to. You have to keep up that skill, or else it will erode. This is what I usually call fundamentals, that it's an eroding platform, that it's always crumbling underneath you. It's never permanent, again. You learn something, you forget about stuff. It gets, what people say is rusty. I'm so rusty now. I don't know how to draw those things anymore. Uh, I get a lot of students that come back to my classes like that, saying, I haven't taken your drawing class in so long, or I haven't drawn forever. I'm rusty again. It's like, that should not be happening. That word of rusty should never be coming up, especially in your fundamentals. But I understand, it's like some things, it's just hard to keep up and balance all at the same time. And I'm also in fault to the fact that, things like that can degrade to a certain degree. But I'll always be conscious of it. Why painting digitally is so complicated? Because painting in general is really hard, but so is drawing. It's all hard. Why is it supposed to be easy? It's supposed to be complicated because there are so many paths to take. There's no one way in how to paint. There's no one way in how to draw. And because there's so many paths that are open based on a skill, that creates uniqueness and individualism within art and design. So you need that complication because as how people format things differently, you're able to create new visuals. Speaking of cups, I gotta drink some coffee. Have you read the book, The Five Rings? You're talking about the are you talking about the Miyamoto Musashi book? Can't remember. Was it the 5 rings or was it the 10 rings? I can't remember what it was. That Namor card I've actually had a couple times now. Cyber. This artist Sam Keith I always really enjoyed back when I was younger. He's got crazy anatomy. I know of the book, Musashi's book. I actually listened to it on tape, audio tape, not too long ago. The Book of 5 Rings. Okay, that's what it was. Well, I don't know why I thought of 10 for some reason. I'm thinking of something else. But there's a Black Panther. Man, the edge of cuts are a little bit all shady. But we'll keep that one for now. Hulk as well, too. That's a good one. But yeah, so, I don't know, not too long ago, I was listening to the audio tape of it. I've never actually sat down and officially read it, but I was, working on things. I thought, I want something in the background, so I was just playing it in the back. I mean, yeah, it's a solid book, in terms of its information, of its philosophy, and, the breakdown of his thoughts. Other tapes, like, I listened to in a similar vein was, like, the Art of War kind of stuff, right? All very common cliche Asian books and stuff that are out there. From Japanese and Chinese philosophy and mentality, war and whatnot. What do you like to do on your free time when you're not working on art? I mean, this is part of it. Collecting things, it's still art related, of course. I get inspiration from this. Even like right before we did the actual live chat, I was shooting my bow and arrow. So I have a backyard that has a bit of space, so I have a target, shooting my bow and arrow. It's just fun, and it's just more for my personal entertainment and just recreation. Being outside and moving a little bit is always good. I don't want to just sit in my room all day and do that. There's another hollow card. Hopefully this one's not damaged in the corners. It's Hulk. This one feels pretty good. This is that hollow. I have the whole set of this, but the ones that I have degraded in time. Because when I first got these cards, it was in 1992. So I was just a kid. So a lot of these cards now have started to like fade, or because they've been in plastic sleeves for so long, moisture sometimes gets in there. So the surfaces are really quite damaged. This is also another part of the reason why I'm recollecting some of these again, because I want to have the old cards that I have, but eventually those ones are going to fall apart. So I just want to make sure I have some new ones that I can keep. Fantastic Four. Nice. Cool. Have you heard about Heavy Paint, digital painting software? I have. I haven't used it really in depth, but it seems like it produces some fun stuff, more abstracted. Quicksilver. Speaking of WandaVision, anybody been watching any episodes or not? But it was kind of cool they brought in the actor for the X-Men series into it. Sorry for any spoilers if nobody's watched it yet, so I'll speak no more about that if you haven't watched it. Question here is, do you think it is necessary to know all about the skeleton and muscles to become a good at figure drawing? No. But you should know enough. As long as you know the primary things about skeletal structures and the muscles. Should you know every single muscle in the forearm? I don't. Am I, good at figure drawing? Generally. Am I better than others? There are people out there that are far better than me in terms of figure drawing. But do I know enough to be able to generate my own figures and characters and stuff like that? For sure. I mean, could you really ever memorize and know every single thing about anything? Even if it's a singular subject? If you spend a lifetime possibly, or if you're just someone who knows it so well based on how your absorption through your memory bank is? So I don't know. But I don't know everything about the figure. Same thing like perspective. Do I know everything about perspective? No. Have I taken multiple perspective classes? Yeah. Do I know enough to get by on things? Absolutely. Are some things also done by eye? It is. But I would say every artist out there, to some degree, will say that, To add on to this, so you don't need to know every single anatomy part to be able to draw a character? Again, I don't think you do. Should you know the major parts, though? I think so. The parts that are very visible, an aspect of landmarking, to be able to control proportion, to show a strong sense of volume, and also then, of course, the understanding how function of anatomy works, the muscle groupings and how they are able to tense up and lean and stretch out, the squash and stretch, for sure. So yes, you do need to be competent in anatomy, but again, like I said, can you name every single little muscle in the hand? Well, do I need to? I just need to draw the hand in forms, right? I can understand the major bones, the metacarpals and the phalanges and stuff like this, but I don't know every single tendon and muscle inside there. Do I want to? I mean, it's cool, but there's so much to know, so much to learn, and I can't retain all that information. I'm not built that way. But I'll definitely revisit it, and I'll definitely be interested in exploring it more. Got a nice little hollow card right there. Now we did still pull out that nice MJ. At least we got one of these. I'm going to open couple last of the DC cards because I opened up some of the Marvel, and then we'll call it a night here soon. Holly saying, I was a student of mine a few terms ago at Art Center. Nice. Welcome back, Holly. Well, not welcome back, but welcome here. Hope everything is going well for you. Jesse asked, do I know anything about the Superani Anatomy book that's coming out? So you consider pre-ordering one? I don't. I know of the artist. I haven't really seen the book, but it does seem amazing. A 400 or 500 page anatomy book, also applied to like character centered art. I think it's nice, and the guy obviously technically is amazing. He can paint beautifully. The guy can paint photorealistic stuff on his phone. It's pretty crazy, Going back to some of the DC cards again. I have to organize all this stuff right after this. So many cards. It's amazing after opening just like 5-10 packs per box. You get stacks of cards so high. In terms of figure drawing for you, Michael Matase's 4C drawing is really cool. Knowing the anatomy well to then exaggerating it. Absolutely. And for sure, like I said, you have to know enough of the anatomy, for sure. So yes, you have to be very competent in that field. Much like in perspective. You have to know a lot of those areas in perspective, especially when it comes to the baselines of fundamentals and any additional things that can really help you control camera and depth and scale, angles of views, all that kind of stuff. There's another nice Shazam. We saw one earlier that was really funny with him running. I like that these cards are really comedic to me. I like the way they're drawn. Have I ever had anxiety? Um, Not really, but sometimes I do get into. Again, this is something I've never actually shared, but sometimes I will get slight panic attacks. I don't even know if that's what they are. I don't know what the reaction is. It's not exacerbated by anything. It just sometimes happens by random. Sometimes I usually get them in very like it's very mental. It's all about breathing for me. If I can't catch my breath, I start to feel very panicky. It almost feels like you're dying. I'm sure that's very much a panic attack, right? But it just happens randomly sometimes. I had it once where it was really kind of in a moment I had to get up and get out of the classroom in high school. I was in a class, I just felt like I couldn't catch my breath. I had to get out, walk around just to get that. Sometimes I'll get that if I'm in a movie theater. I'm sitting down watching a movie because if I'm uncomfortable, I can't get the right kind of, I don't know, seating position and I just feel constricted. I think constriction definitely makes me feel that way. So I might even be slightly claustrophobic, possibly. But I never really felt like enclosed spaces has been a huge problem for me. I think it's the constriction of being like tightened, you know? So if my chest can't expand to catch a breath, I feel very like antsy in that situation. But I think that's a physical but a mental combination thing. Um, but I do feel that. I don't get it a lot. Like it's like once maybe in a couple months it'll happen slightly. Never had anything so extreme where I had to like, you know, call for help or anything like this. Usually just I just take a moment, step away, you know, take some slower breaths. Sometimes if I take a lot of oxygen and it keeps adding to it, um, but I can predict it. I can see when it comes, and usually I'm able to, prepare for it. And usually I just have to slow it down. I'm just gonna slow my breath, take shorter breath, not deep breaths, and then kind of distracting myself. If I focus on something else and get my mind out of that headspace, it passes really quickly. But when I was younger, it's like it kind of there were moments like when it was strong, and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is, you know. But I think I have a lot of like these small little, as everyone does, small little quirks and mental things. I definitely feel there's that Superman again. I wanted this one. The other one was damaged. This one looks pretty good. Corners are still a little bit bent. Ugh, it's frustrating. But I have these little quirks about me, like physically. If I can't, it's either a breathing thing or small little twitches and stuff like that. Not twitches, but things just how it feels. Like sometimes I can't like feel like I stretch well enough, and I feel tight in some areas. I think it's that tightness I don't like. I think if I was like, I don't know, bound to something, I probably wouldn't feel very good. So a question for you from the UN is it up to yourself to decide how detailed you want your figure to be? I mean, yeah. But also I would say it's a part of what you're producing and what it's for, what it's applied to. Like if I'm producing, let's say, a piece for a show as an illustration of a figure, but I'm looking for a certain visual aesthetic, the actual medium, the actual final piece that you're creating can dictate what it is that needs to be done for details or whatever the case is, right? There's that Superman again. So I'm looking for something even cleaner. This corner again is still slightly soft right in there. Not getting the exact crispness that I want. I'm getting these repeats, but again, it's been always this upper right hand corner. You can't see it on the camera, but it's so small, but it's enough for me to like that. I don't like it. I feel like I'm definitely a little bit obsessive compulsive too. Let's see. Any other questions? No, just people talking. But anyways, we have essentially one more pack of the DC to go for. We've talked a lot. We've answered a lot of questions. Hopefully, the things we talked about today have been, helpful to some degree, interesting to think about. I hope that you guys have just enjoyed just hanging out and chatting a little bit. I'll be trying to do this again next time. Maybe next Friday. Well, definitely by next Friday. And I'll come back and continue opening up the rest of these packs of cards in these boxes. I still have a bit more left. I have more boxes of other things coming just for my own personal collection. Another box of 2 boxes of basketball cards. Different collection. I haven't bought any new Marvel or DC ones because the prices on them have gone up like crazy. I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on the boxes, but it feels like $100 and maybe. But yeah, I can't afford that. They're too expensive. So this might be a limited thing. I don't know. Maybe I'll do other things. I'll always call it cards and coffee, but maybe I'll also share other stuff of my hobbies. What's your absolute favorite hobby? I think it changes all the time. There can be one favorite in a moment, and then it switches up. For me, again, I'm very, like I said, obsessive. When I get something in my system, I can't let it go. I'm just fixated on it for whatever number long of time I need to go for. So sometimes it could be like something physical, like sports or exercise. I'll spend, a crazy amount of time on that. Another thing could be like photography. I love photography. I'll spend sometimes months just on that, and usually it's just fixed on that thing. But then it kind of not really wanes, but then something pulls me somewhere else. Like right now, it's just cards all of a sudden. I can't stop thinking about it. But this is a side hobby. What I'm always thinking about is drawing, but it's that's the center of it. But these are the other things on the side. I'm always like just interested in going for. That Nightwing again. But I wouldn't say I have one favorite hobby that I always go to. I have a multitude of ones I center on. I feel like what the next one's going to be, honestly, is hobby. Like, not hobby, I'm sorry, model making. So I did a small little airplane model about a couple of weeks ago, just to kind of play with it again, and I think that kind of hooked me again real quickly. And I have a bunch of models still in boxes I haven't touched, so I might actually venture back into that area. But I'm a little, oh, there's a nice flash. I'm a little bit reserved on it because I know that once I go in that route of the models, it's months of commitment. Because the models that I build, they take a long time. I put a lot of time and effort into them. Interesting. Well, we did get one solid card that I really wanted, which was the All-Star Michael Jordan. But I wanted the gold one too. There's a gold foil one that's in here somewhere. Hopefully I'll pull that at some point. I still have a lot of those basketball card packs left over, so I'm hoping at some point, I don't know how many we have left here. Quite a few though. Definitely easily plus 10, maybe 12, 15 packs left over. So I think we've only gone through half, honestly. Well, last couple of questions here. Let's see. So I kind of skipped a little bit down. Big Boy's asking, started drawing seriously 5 months ago. I've been struggling how to approach my art studies and practice wisely. I guess I don't know how to guide myself or understand how to practice any advice. I don't think you're supposed to. It's only been 5 months. Seriously, right? So how are you supposed to actually understand a direct guide and understand how to actually practice in that short amount of time? The only thing you can do is just to play with that idea of concept of just exploring art. If you're taking classes, then obviously you're going to learn some, directions and techniques and methods that you can keep practicing on. But within a less than half a year, it's like I don't think any of that stuff is going to be established in any way at all. The only thing you can do is to explore and to just have fun seriously drawing, right? I know that sounds kind of like what most artists would say in response. Oh, just have fun, just don't worry about it too much. I really do think that you're overthinking it. I don't think you need to actually be that specific about, I need to find this exact guide for myself at the moment in terms of how I should practice properly. Again, it goes back to the beginning, what I mentioned earlier about not wanting to waste time, afraid of losing your place, or maybe even maybe being too late to get out there, But if you just can't sit and just do it without this idea and thought of like, I need to know the exact method of how I should approach this as a practice. You want to be efficient, I know. You want to produce good things, also, that's great. But at the same time, you should be able to just sit there because there's no pressure to want to do it because you feel like you have to based on the things you're trying to pursue, but you just want to. If you can keep doing this, as you continue on and take more classes or different kind of tutorials, those will start to integrate into your daily activity of wanting to draw because it's fun, which then becomes more of a systemized method because you're now starting to learn how to approach things as a practice or as a guide. But right now, if you're saying, I've done 5 months of serious practice, but it's mostly on your own, no classes, maybe some books, maybe some tutorials, it's not enough information. So would I recommend a class? Absolutely. In art, the class is not really the important thing. It's the people. Like interacting with an actual instructor, someone who's experienced, interacting with students that are actually there that are also on their methods to learn. You start to see the comparison of what someone else is doing and what I could do. But if you're just doing it by yourself, you have no context of anything. You can look at books, but that book is so disconnected to what you're doing. You just see images. It's like, okay, I'll just copy that. But what is it for? Why? How? So having someone there hands-on, truly important, which is why classes are a must in art. I truly believe that. This is not because I'm trying to sell a class. I'm not trying to sell a school. I'm just saying these are things that you should do to experience, to elevate your understanding, the awareness of stuff, right? You don't even have to finish it, okay? But at the very least, understand it, to explore. If you've never taken a class before in art, just try it. I understand, well, it's a risk. I don't have that much money. Well, save. Save for a year if you have to. Take one class. At least you'll say, I've done it once, at least, you know? Last couple questions here again from Benny. Can you talk a bit about your experience job hunting after you graduated Art Center? Yeah, it was tough. I didn't get a job outside of Art Center. I graduated Art Center in 2004 in December. Didn't find work. Didn't get hired. I wanted to be in animation. I applied towards places like Pixar. I had connections there. I had work portfolio built towards it. Didn't get work. They turned me down. Rightfully so. My work wasn't good enough at that point. And so what I had to do was hunker down, keep producing more work, and build up my skill set. What else could I do? I went back to Art Center. I retook classes again, just out of the side, not even being a full-time student. I would just sit in on classes again because I knew people there. It took me 5 to 6 months to find my first work, contract-wise. And that didn't happen because I found it and applied for it. They came to me by chance. But what I was doing was actively creating and generating new work and making connections. So somebody then passed my work to somebody else who I didn't know, and by chance they saw it and said, this work stuff right here applies to what we're doing, let's contact him. So I got my first job out of school by luck and timing, but also because I was actively pursuing my own endeavors and increasing my skill. Was it guaranteed that I was going to get work? Absolutely not. There could have been easily a chance, maybe there's some parallel universe where I didn't get that first job, and I still am, now going in a direction I'm not going into, parallel universe of me not doing art. Again, these are the last couple of questions, if I can find any here. What are your thoughts for someone that has interestment, I've never heard of that, on anything? I've been stuck into this circle when I usually jump one thing to another. I'm afraid I'm going to lose balance of improvement. Yeah, but it depends on your age, depends on where you're at right now. There are some things that have affordance of time based on age. There is, of course, right? Like if you're 50 years old, you're still like jumping from one thing to another. Well, that's a little bit sketchy right there, By that time, hopefully you have at least an idea of what you want to go for. To be successful in that, it might take you a lifetime, but at least to understand more of what you're really interested in, you should at least know by then, right? So, but if you're like 18, well, at that point, I think you shouldn't worry so much. You can jump around. You can have many interests in things, or no interest in stuff, and just find stuff, right? Connect to people, if anything else. Let them introduce you to new things too. Let's see. Do you think it's more important to know the shape and rhythm of the body parts, or to know more about the muscles that is underneath? Both. You should know, again, those base muscles and anatomy, and you should also then find things like line and rhythm and shapes to be able to tie them together aesthetically. Thoughts on the use of VRs as a form of creating concept art? Well, it's not long-term future. This is now, okay? Well, in terms of application, but in terms of long-term future for everyday kind of use, it's going to happen for sure. VR is not for everyday people, in my opinion. It'll be there always for entertainment purposes, maybe for games, but not everybody's going to use it. But for the industry, studio work, VR already is a kind of a standardized thing. AR is much more so in like film and movies, but for like concept art, for building stuff, it's being used currently too. But I think VR is going to be great, for sure. I don't know if I would ever use it for like actual art development, but I would use it for like actual networking, meeting up with people, meetings and stuff like this too, professionals. I think that's the real application right there. Let's see, last couple of things here. I purchased your book and it really helped me get into the basics of drawing. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support. If you have any drawing methods for figures, animals, and other stuff, well, I plan to produce more dynamic Bibles. And each book will be in 2 new subjects each time. So they'll be coming out yearly. The next book, the second dynamic Bible, will come out this year, hopefully by beginning of fall. Okay, cool. Well, it doesn't seem like there's any other questions. I hope you guys had a good time just hanging out, chatting with me. Hopefully I was clear enough in answering any questions. This is all just advice. These are things just of my own thoughts and reaction based on experience. None of this stuff is to tell you what you need to be doing. This is just stuff based on conversation, just to think about. I think about it all the time. So I hope you guys had a good time, just like I said, hanging out with each other. And we will definitely do this again next week, hopefully on a Friday. I do want to still do a live drawing session next week. I'm thinking about doing that on Monday. So if you do plan to join on my Twitch channel on Peterhanstyle, I'll definitely sketch and answer questions. But for next Friday, I plan to open more cards because I'm going to open them anyways. So I might as well hang out and talk to people while I'm doing it. We opened a lot of packs, but yeah, fun stuff. Anyways, thank you guys for hanging out. I will see you all next time. In terms of Emerald, that book, you're talking about the Dynamic Bible, go to superanius.com. Superanius.com, okay? And I will see you all next time. Appreciate you guys.